Caitlin Clark come out and say what needed to be said. She stood on business and said, we need to play in games. And y'all that are signed to these other leagues that are compromised, stop playing with the people who are not. Stop playing games. Let's get to it. Ain't nothing to it, but
here's what just unfolded, and it's bigger than it looks. Kelsey Plum, serving as the first vice president of the WNBA Players Association, just took a firm, uncompromising stance in ongoing contract negotiations. But the timing is what makes this moment volatile. Just hours earlier, Caitlin Clark, the league's biggest draw, delivered a very different message while speaking at USA basketball camp in North Carolina. Clark publicly urged both sides to meet in the middle and emphasized that players need to be on the court this season. Plum responded with blunt honesty, saying talks have been extremely frustrating and that the two sides remain nowhere close to an agreement. Two stars, two opposing visions. And here's the twist that changes everything. One of them holds ownership in a competing league. That detail adds an entirely new layer to an already tense standoff.
Plum's response is in this. This is crazy, man. Like, you're signed to Unrivaled. You got equity in Unrivaled. Like, y'all are somewhat compromised on the situation to a degree, even if you're it's just weird, man. It's a little weird. Y'all on the board, but y'all got equity in the competitor leagues. It's all a little conflict of interest. Conflict of interest. Here it says, Indiana Fever star Caitlin Clark said Friday that while WNBA players will fight for everything we deserve during their current round of collective bargaining agreement negotiations.
Pay close attention, because this wasn't an off-the-cuff remark from Caitlin Clark. Speaking at Duke University on January 10, 2025, she delivered a calculated message with real weight behind it. Clark made it unmistakably clear that fans want basketball on the floor and that reaching a deal will require flexibility from both sides. This wasn't casual commentary. This was the face of the league stepping forward. The same player who pulled in 3.2 million viewers for WNBA broadcasts last season chose to publicly apply pressure, not on ownership, but on her own union. That alone speaks volumes. Clark also warned that negotiations are entering a critical phase. In diplomatic terms, that's code for time is almost gone. The window to fix this is closing fast, and delays are no longer harmless. And here's where the situation becomes uncomfortable. The league and the players' union already missed their original deadline once, pushing it back to January 19th. That extension added 6 extra weeks beyond the December cutoff, but half of that cushion is already gone. 3 weeks burned, no agreement in sight. Based on Kelsey Plum's own comments, progress has stalled. When you're running out of runway after missing the first deadline, that's not strategy. It's risk.
Second extension of the current CBA through January 9th, 2026, as both sides continue to work toward a new deal. But questions persist on whether both sides will come to an agreement by then, or even whether a work stoppage could be on the horizon. Now, this is what Kelsey Plum had to say. Kelsey Plum, first vice president of the WNBPA, said at Camp Friday that the talks have been a little disheartening.
The league has officially put its latest proposal on the table, and on the surface, it looks dramatic. Under the new offer, the maximum salary in 2026 would jump to a guaranteed $1 million baseline. With projected revenue sharing included, top-tier players could realistically earn $1.2 million or more per season. At the same time, the overall salary cap would surge to $5 million in 2026, with built-in increases tied directly to league revenue growth. When you compare that to where things stand today, the contrast is staggering. The current max salary is just under $242,000. This proposal would more than quadruple the earning ceiling for elite players, an unprecedented shift in WNBA compensation history. But here's where negotiations hit a wall. The players' union isn't just focused on headline salaries. they're pushing for a complete restructuring of the system itself. That includes a revamped revenue-sharing model, enforceable standards for team facilities and staffing, and significantly expanded benefits packages. The sticking point? Trade-offs. To fund the million-dollar salaries, the league wants to reduce or eliminate certain perks like housing stipends and vehicle allowances. The union won't budge. They aren't willing to exchange existing benefits for higher pay. Their position is clear. They want everything, not a reshuffle.
Priorities are transforming the league's salary structure and revenue sharing system, introducing standards for team facilities and staffing, and garnering more robust benefits. The league has said it wants to substantially increase players' salary and other cost commitments, while also incentivizing owners to continue to invest in operating the business and building sustained profitability. The most recently reported league proposal.
This is where Caitlin Clark's perspective clearly diverges from the union's hardline strategy. She isn't part of the negotiating committee and isn't directly involved in the decision-making process. For the Indiana Fever, union representation falls to players like Lexi Hull, Lexi Brown, and Aaliyah Boston, while Brianna Stewart serves as the union's treasurer. Clark stays informed through briefings, but she's not in the room shaping demands or drafting proposals. That distance gives her something most others don't have: freedom. She can say what many players privately think, but won't publicly admit. Clark has drawn a distinction between fights that are worth escalating and areas where compromise is necessary. Her message wasn't about backing down. It was about leverage and timing. She made it clear that players should absolutely protect what they've earned. But she also emphasized that progress requires flexibility from both sides. That's not weakness. It's strategic awareness. Because pushing for everything with zero room to negotiate carries a real risk. If talks collapse, there's no season. No season means no games, no visibility, and no growth. And if that happens, the momentum built in 2024 disappears overnight.
That's what that line should have said. They are looking to capitalize off of Caitlin Clark, because if there was no Caitlin Clark in this league, they would have already agreed on a deal. Trust and believe, they wouldn't be doing all this hard negotiating and this and that if there was no Caitlin Clark that came in this league and brought the numbers, brought the viewership, brought everything. Simple as that. Simple as that. Here it says, what I'm proud of is that we play with a group of women that are united and we're standing on something, Plum said. Chicago Sky All-Star Angel Reese echoed that sentiment. I think everybody's really intentional about what we want. I think the players in WNBA have done it.
Here's what Caitlin Clark seems to recognize that many others are overlooking. The WNBA didn't just have a good year. It had a historic one. And that surge didn't happen by accident. It was driven overwhelmingly by Clark's arrival. Indiana Fever attendance didn't just rise, it exploded. Television ratings shattered previous benchmarks. Jerseys, tickets, and merchandise sold at unprecedented levels. Sponsors who once hesitated suddenly rushed in, eager to attach themselves to the momentum. This wasn't the result of steady, incremental growth. It was a cultural shockwave, a moment, a lightning strike that reintroduced the WNBA to millions of casual sports fans who hadn't been paying attention before. Even official reporting hints at this reality, noting the league's desire to capitalize on recent growth. But behind the polished language, everyone understands what fueled that growth in 2024. Clark also understands something more uncomfortable. Moments like this are fragile. They don't last forever. If there's no 2025 season, those new fans won't wait around. They'll shift their attention elsewhere, and the buzz disappears almost as quickly as it arrived. Once momentum dies, it's incredibly hard to restart. That's where Clark's warning becomes urgent. For many players, this may be the single best chance they'll ever have to secure truly transformative earnings. And she's essentially saying, don't let it slip away by refusing to compromise at all. But that message is meeting resistance. Kelsey Plum has gone public emphasizing unity and principle, signaling that players are prepared to hold their ground. Angel Reese echoed that stance, stressing deliberation and collective resolve. It's classic union language, measured, unified, and firm. The kind of messaging you hear when a group believes a showdown may be unavoidable.
For number one pick in women's basketball sensation has called this the biggest moment the WNBA has seen, making it all the more important that we find a way to play this next season. A work stoppage could emerge if the owners opt to lock out the players or the players opt to strike. I think there are different things that we can find ways to say no. We certainly deserve that, and we're not going to compromise on that. And there are other things we can probably compromise on. You want to understand both sides and be respectful of both sides, but at the end of the day, come to a compromise. Caitlin Clark is the
Now let's address the uncomfortable reality that rarely gets discussed openly. Kelsey Plum isn't just a union leader negotiating with the WNBA. She's also deeply invested elsewhere. Plum is a co-founder of Unrivaled, the new 3-on-3 league launching in Miami. She owns equity in the league, signed a multi-million-dollar contract with it, and holds a seat on its board of directors. That matters. Because as WNBA negotiations drag on and the possibility of a lost 2025 season grows louder, a very clear scenario emerges. Players would suddenly need another place to play, earn, and stay visible. And sitting perfectly positioned to benefit from that chaos is Unrivaled. That's not coincidence. That's leverage. This is what people mean when they talk about conflicts of interest. Plum is representing dozens of WNBA players in negotiations, yet she personally stands to gain if those talks collapse and athletes seek alternative leagues. And she's not alone. Brianna Stewart, the union's treasurer, and someone actively involved in the negotiation process, is also a co-founder of Unrivaled with significant equity. Nafisa Collier holds the same dual role. These are central figures shaping union strategy, and all three have major financial stakes in a direct competitor to the WNBA. That context matters when evaluating their public posture and willingness to push negotiations to the brink. Caitlin Clark, meanwhile, is operating from a completely different position. She has no ownership stake in Unrivaled. She isn't signed to Athletes Unlimited or locked into any alternative league. Her earning power, visibility, and long-term brand value are almost entirely dependent on the WNBA continuing to grow. If the WNBA doesn't play in 2025, Clark doesn't have a safety net. She loses a full season of her prime earning window, time she can never get back. There's no backup league waiting with guaranteed money. That's why her outlook isn't driven by leverage games or alternative options. She needs the WNBA to succeed. For Caitlin Clark, there is no parallel path. The league's success and her future are directly tied together, and that reality fundamentally separates her perspective from the union leadership at the table. Here's where things stand as negotiations barrel toward a breaking point. The official hard deadline is January 19, 2025. That date is now less than 2 weeks away. But in reality, a deal has to be finalized well before then. Teams need time to prepare. Front offices need clarity. Training camps traditionally open in April, and free agency normally begins in February. If there's no agreement by late January or early February, the 2025 season isn't just at risk, it's in real danger. And right now, all signs point to serious trouble. Reporting from both sides indicates the gap between the league and the union remains wide. Even union leadership has admitted there's still substantial ground to cover. This is where Caitlin Clark has stepped into a role few expected. She's gone public, urging both sides to cool tensions and search for compromise. She's framing this moment as the most important crossroads in WNBA history, and stressing that getting players on the court this season is essential. Clark has been unusually candid, acknowledging that a lockout or strike is absolutely on the table if talks collapse, and making it clear she wants to prevent that outcome at all costs. That kind of messaging isn't accidental. It's calculated. It's leadership. She's positioning herself as the steady, pragmatic voice trying to keep the league from detonating at its peak moment. Kelsey Plum, however, is pushing in the opposite direction. Her public comments continue to emphasize how stalled and discouraging negotiations have been. She repeatedly underscores how far apart the two sides remain. At the same time, she's rallying players around unity, resolve, and holding the line on core demands. That language matters. It's not the tone of someone laying the groundwork for compromise. It's the tone you hear when sides are bracing for confrontation. One camp is focused on avoiding catastrophe. The other appears to be preparing for a showdown. And with the clock rapidly running out, the next few weeks will decide whether the WNBA moves forward or blows everything up at the height of its momentum.